The story began 3 years ago at Zhongnan Mountain in China. A girl named Mei Hui was very sick, barely breathing, and her grandfather brought her up the mountain hoping to find a doctor who could help. However, after taking her pulse, the famous Dr. Wu Ming's master, shook his head and sighed, saying that the illness had gone too deep and there was no way to save her. Just then, Wu Ming returned from afar, and he insisted that he could save the girl. But his master strictly forbade it, believing that it would be interfering with fate. However, for Wu Ming, human life was the most important thing. Grateful for his kindness and talent, Mei Hui's grandfather knelt down and begged him, promising to marry his granddaughter to Wu Ming if she was saved. 3 years later, on an island nation in the Pacific Ocean, Longcheng, major online forums were buzzing with news that the Yang Corporation, one of the top 500 companies in the world, had announced a global reward to find a miracle doctor to treat the company's critically ill leader. The reward of 100 million yuan had caused a sensation. Yang Ling, the eldest daughter of the Yang family, had also solemnly declared that whoever cured her grandfather's illness, she would accept any condition, including marriage. At this same time, Wu Ming came down from the mountain to retrieve the needle he had implanted in Mei Hui's brain 3 years ago and to fulfill the arranged marriage. On his way down the mountain, he unexpectedly encountered a fierce, hungry tiger, but despite the danger, Wu Ming treated it like a game. With just a few acupuncture needles, the tiger was subdued. Before leaving, he playfully teased, "When I come back, I'll get you a gold tooth," making the tiger angry but unable to do anything. At the Baotang Medical Clinic, Yu Tong, the second young lady of the Yang Corporation, was soaking in medicinal herbs to treat her muteness. But all the soaking hadn't made any progress. Just then, Wu Ming arrived at the clinic to find Zheng Chun, one of his students. But when he entered, he unexpectedly ran into a beautiful girl. Seeing that he looked only about 20 years old and yet claimed to be looking for his student, the girl, thinking she was being tricked, immediately tried to chase Wu Ming away. But with just one acupuncture needle to an acupoint on her leg, he immediately made her sit down into a split on the ground, unable to stand up. He leisurely walked inside, constantly calling out Xiao Chun, but no one answered. Hearing a noise from the room, he went closer and saw a girl soaking in a medicinal bath. Noticing her pale face, Wu Ming curiously asked if she was okay and if she needed help. The girl swayed and almost fell. He quickly caught her, then immediately used acupressure to immobilize her so he could easily fix her dislocated ankle. However, this action made her misunderstand, thinking he was a pervert. Wu Ming didn't understand what she was gesturing and calmly said, "I was just fixing your ankle. Didn't you notice it's better?" Hearing this, she quickly looked down, and sure enough, the pain was gone. Her attitude immediately changed, and she gratefully thanked him. Wu Ming then took out acupuncture needles, inserting them into the main acupoints on her body to stimulate her blood flow. After only a short while, she spoke her first words after being mute for a long time. Just then, Lu, an acquaintance of his, called, and he hurriedly got up, said goodbye, and promised that if they met again, he would help her completely cure her illness. The girl had the needles removed and managed to stand up, but was still embarrassed, muttering complaints about him. Afterward, she went inside and complained to her master that someone had bullied her. Hearing this, the master was surprised and asked carefully, was a young man in his 20s, simply dressed, wearing cloth shoes? Hearing the description, he turned pale and muttered, "It's over. You've caused trouble." At the same time, Yu Tong, wanting to find Wu Ming, ordered her people to check the surveillance cameras. Seeing her older sister return, she happily ran out to brag. "Today, I met a miracle doctor. He's the one who cured my muteness." But her sister just smiled faintly, not believing her. In her eyes, her younger sister was just daydreaming because she was too worried about their grandfather's illness because so many famous doctors had given up. How could someone just speak and be cured? The older sister also thought her younger sister was just stressed because the family was in turmoil. With that said, the older sister went inside. Just then, the bodyguard informed Yu Tong that they had found the miracle doctor's whereabouts. Wu Ming, along with his close friend Lu, came down the mountain to find his former fiancée, Mei Hui. However, he didn't receive the welcome he expected. Mei Hui's mother looked down on his mountain background, believing he wasn't worthy of her daughter, who belonged to the upper class in Longcheng. Mei Hui also didn't accept the marriage arranged by their elders, because in her heart, the ideal man should be talented, have a successful career, and be able to make it rain. She gave him money and asked him to leave. Even though he was rejected, Wu Ming calmly said that her illness hadn't been cured yet, and he came to fulfill his promise and treat her, but both mother and daughter didn't listen, insisting on chasing him away. Just then, a Yang family member, someone from the Yang Corporation, appeared, making advances toward Mei Hui. Seeing that Wu Ming was just a country bumpkin, he immediately called Brother Song Ying to come and demanded that his hands be chopped off. Afterward, Lu took Wu Ming out to eat, but before they could settle down, Yu Tong had followed the trail and found him. She earnestly asked him to treat her illness, but Wu Ming remained humble, saying he was just an ordinary practitioner, without any great ability. Right then, the group of people sent by the Yang family member reappeared, intending to attack Wu Ming. Yu Tong's bodyguard, seeing the injustice, stepped in to help. In the chaos, she was attacked from behind, which Wu Ming couldn't stand to watch. He took action, using just a few acupuncture needles, which made the thugs fall in the blink of an eye. The head of the thugs, Song Ying, then swaggered out, demanding to chop off Wu Ming's hands. Seeing this, Yu Tong's bodyguard asked him, "Are you Song Ying, whose boss is Chong He?" Yu Tong immediately called Chong He, questioning why he dared to touch the Yang family's people. As soon as he heard the boss's voice, he was so scared that he immediately led his men to retreat, not daring to say another word. After the incident, the bodyguard asked Wu Ming if he could treat the young lady, but he still only admitted to being an ordinary doctor. Seeing his humility, Yu Tong didn't force him and had the bodyguard escort her away. As Wu Ming and Lu were about to leave the restaurant, the owner stopped them, demanding compensation. Lu didn't have any money, so he planned to run away, and Wu Ming didn't have a single penny either. He then offered to treat the owner's illness to settle the debt. Seeing the owner hesitate and not admit he was sick, Wu Ming whispered that he had an unspeakable disease. The wife standing next to him became angry, believing he was scamming them. In response, Wu Ming didn't explain, only stuffing a pill into the owner's mouth. After a while, the medicine Wu Ming gave him began to take effect. The restaurant owner, who had been suffering from impotence, suddenly felt strong, hugged his wife, and rushed straight into the house, leaving Wu Ming and Lu standing outside, only able to laugh. Meanwhile, in another place in Longcheng, Long Gang sought out Chong He, asking him to help him seize the Yang family's older sister. However, the Yang family's power was too great, making Chong He hesitant. Seeing this, Long Gang made a condition that if he succeeded, he would give him 5% of Long Corporation's shares. Greedy for the large profit, Chong He immediately put his hand out and agreed to sign the secret deal. Outside, Wu Ming and Lu went to the club, where Chong He often frequented to find his whereabouts. However, they were blocked right at the door because they didn't have a black card, a mandatory requirement for entry. Just then, the eldest young lady of the Yang family arrived and saw them. Knowing that Long Cheng had recently been experiencing a series of disturbances, she suspected Wu Ming and Lu were related to her opponents, so she coldly threw them a handful of money and chased them away. Lu, both arrogant and outspoken, said, "Do you think we're beggars?" while secretly picking up the money as quickly as possible, making for a scene that was both funny and embarrassing. Inside the club, Chong He's dirty plan began to unfold. His men had given him a vial of drugs, which he quickly mixed into a glass of wine for Yang Ling. When Yang Ling and her assistant entered, seeing that it was too crowded inside, Chong He deliberately suggested that she have all the outsiders leave so they could conveniently discuss business. Yang Ling thought this was familiar territory and didn't suspect anything, so she had her assistant wait outside the door. Trusting the surroundings, Yang Ling was unsuspecting and was tricked into raising the glass of wine containing the drugs that Chong He had given her. After Yang Ling drank the drugged wine, Chong He knew he needed more time for the drug to take effect, so he deliberately beat around the bush. He mentioned what she planned to do if something happened to her and her sister's grandfather. Seeing that she wasn't interested in hearing his probing words, Yang Ling frankly asked him to get straight to the point. Pressed by Yang Ling, Chong He didn't hide anything anymore, revealing that her uncle had approached him, proposing to cooperate in eliminating the two sisters in exchange for a portion of Yang Corporation's shares. Yang Ling didn't believe his words, thinking this was just a tactic to divide them internally. To prove it, he played a recording of the conversation between himself and her uncle. Despite the evidence, Yang Ling firmly refused to cooperate. She immediately stood up and demanded to leave, but at this point, the drug had taken effect, making her head spin. Realizing she had been drugged, Yang Ling tried to call her assistant outside the door for help, but her people had been controlled by Chang He's subordinates. The situation became critical, and she struggled to run around the room to avoid being restrained. Meanwhile, Chang He was smugly complacent, believing he would definitely possess her tonight. The drug was working strongly, causing Yang Ling's reason to gradually give way, and she collapsed helplessly, watching him approach, using his phone to record the scene. As Chang He was caressing her, preparing to make his move, Wu Ming suddenly appeared. He loudly asked if this was Chang He's room, and if the person lying there was Chang He, causing the guy to angrily rush up to attack. But with just a few simple moves, Wu Ming knocked him unconscious on the spot. Approaching Yang Ling, Wu Ming quickly realized that she had been given a very strong drug, and if she wasn't detoxified in time, her life would be threatened. He immediately sealed her acupoints, helping her stabilize her condition. However, because the drug was too strong, Yang Ling's sealed acupoints quickly released themselves. In a delirious state, she rushed to caress Wu Ming. In the room filled with lust, stimulated by the strong drug, Wu Ming, a 20-year-old man with a body burning like a warrior, couldn't resist Yang Ling's charm, and the two became entwined in a passionate night, giving each other everything. Chang He, however, was immobilized by acupressure, his eyes wide open, witnessing the bitter scene unfolding right before his eyes, unable to resist. After that night, Wu Ming quietly held Yang Ling in his arms, knowing that when she woke up, she wouldn't be as gentle as she was now, but he was still determined not to let her down, willing to bear the consequences. As he predicted, when Yang Ling woke up, she was panicked by her disheveled clothes and the vague scene before her. Wu Ming then explained the whole thing, that she had been drugged, and he was only saving her, even showing her the video recorded in the phone as evidence of his innocence. She was silent, not knowing whether to believe or blame him, but still turned around and put her clothes back on. He said that this was both of their first times. His name was Wu Ming, and he was willing to provide his ID card to register for marriage and take full responsibility. However, Yang Ling, the proud and strong young lady of the Yang family, didn't want to keep this bond. She gave him a bank card with 10 million yuan in it, considering it compensation for last night's events and asking him to disappear from Longcheng. Yang Ling kicked Long Gang angrily, then walked outside, declaring that she would personally teach Chang He a proper lesson. She immediately led her people in to rescue Wu Ming, but when she entered, the scene before her couldn't help but shock her. He had single-handedly defeated all the bodyguards, and Long Gang was lying there barely breathing, beaten to the point of being unrecognizable, forced to crawl away in humiliation. Yang Ling now understood that Wu Ming was not a simple person. She advised him to leave Longcheng, knowing that Long Gang wouldn't give up easily and would hunt him to the end. But Wu Ming was silent. At that moment, Lu ran in, saw the lipstick marks left on Wu Ming's body, and immediately guessed what had happened with that young lady. Chang He, after waking up, also advised Wu Ming to escape before Long Gang came back for revenge. But Wu Ming told him that he didn't need to worry, and then Wu Ming suddenly said something that stunned Chang He, asking him to take off his pants. Wu Ming requested to examine the wound on Chang He's leg. After examining it, he quickly realized the problem wasn't a broken bone or congenital paralysis, but simply that the meridians were blocked. Wu Ming offered to heal his leg, on the condition that Chang He had to help him complete 3 tasks. Initially, Chang He didn't believe him, only laughed loudly, thinking that no matter how good Wu Ming was at fighting after offending the Long family, he wouldn't be able to protect him, and that healing his leg was out of the question. But when Wu Ming suddenly used 3 acupuncture needles on the main acupoints, Chang He clearly felt his leg could be straightened and regained sensation. Shocked and delighted, he immediately changed his attitude and agreed to the deal. Wu Ming only healed 1 leg first, requiring the 3 tasks to be completed before healing the remaining leg. He quickly took action, using acupuncture to treat him. After only a short while, Chang He was able to stand up, so happy that he covered his face and sobbed. He promised emotionally that he would never betray Wu Ming in his life, and pledged that if the Long family put pressure on him later, he would bear it all for him. Seeing that Chang He was a loyal person, Wu Ming decided not to wait to complete the 3 tasks as agreed, but proactively continue to heal his remaining leg on the spot. At the same time, Yutong's bodyguard investigated information about Wu Ming. He came from Mount Zhongnan, had been engaged to the Wang family, but the engagement was broken off because the Wang family looked down on him. Rumors also said that Wu Ming, because he was unwilling to accept it, stalked a girl named Yu Wang to extort money. Yu Tong didn't completely believe it and decided to personally find out the truth. On the other side, Mei Hui's mother kept pushing her daughter to agree to marry the Yang family's young master, because she believed he was far superior to that Wu guy. Mei Hui, however, was still determined to find a man with character, ability, and courage, not just looking at money. While the two were arguing, Mei Hui suddenly felt dizzy and fainted, and had to be taken to the hospital. Right at the hospital, the Yang family's young master took the opportunity to sneak into the room, intending to molest Mei Hui while she was still unconscious. Fortunately, she woke up at that moment. Her mother quickly came in to announce that she only had hypoglycemia and it was nothing serious, then proactively left private space for her daughter and the young master. The young guy wanted Mei Hui to be his girlfriend, but she flatly refused. Not willing to give up, he threatened that no one but Sheng Chun could save her grandfather's life, and that he was the only opportunity. If she missed it, Mei Hui would become the murderer who killed her grandfather. Seeing this, Mei Hui requested to meet Sheng Chun before agreeing to anything. The young guy agreed and promised to bring her grandfather to meet Sheng Chun. At this time, Wu Ming quietly followed, making the young guy uncomfortable and telling him not to pollute the place. Wu Ming didn't care, only calmly asking the people in the hospital to call Sheng Chun to come out and meet him. His attitude made everyone laugh, thinking he was crazy to call Sheng Chun directly. Mei Hui also sarcastically said that she had been too lenient, causing him to have delusions, and even coldly declared that if she looked at him one more time, she would blind herself. She politely asked the young guy to help her meet Sheng Chun, but when he spoke, the people in the hospital only coldly replied that to meet him, you had to make an appointment in advance, making him lose all face in front of Mei Hui. Just then, her grandfather suddenly fell ill. Wu Ming didn't hesitate and immediately took action to clear his energy channels, helping him temporarily regain his vitality. However, not only was he not thanked, but he was threatened by Mei Hui that if anything happened to her grandfather, she wouldn't let him go. Mei Hui and her mother were so worried that they were in chaos, only wanting to meet Sheng Chun immediately, but the young guy was unable to contact him. At the same time, Yu Tong appeared, witnessing the whole thing. Wu Ming didn't say much, directly calling Little Zheng, ordering him to be there within 2 minutes. Otherwise, he would be punished by the demons. Everyone around continued to mock him, thinking he was crazy. Even Yu Tong's bodyguards showed disdain. The young guy continued to mock him, thinking Wu Ming was just acting, trying to scam them. But he was still silent, only reminding them that in 2 minutes there would be an answer. Mei Hui hurriedly begged the people in the hospital to let her meet Sheng Chun, trying to distance herself from Wu Ming, but the person in charge demanded that Wu Ming kneel down and apologize before they would open the door. Wu Ming calmly replied, "There's 1 minute left, just wait." The bodyguard sneered, waiting to see him humiliate himself. All the people there were gloating over his failure, unaware that they were about to witness Wu Ming's true abilities. The situation escalated as expected. Sheng Chun, fearing punishment from his master, hurriedly told his student to come forward. However, this student didn't believe Wu Ming was his master's master, his tone full of disdain, questioning why he had Sheng Chun's phone number. Wu Ming calmly replied, "If I don't have my student's phone number, then what am I?" But those words made everyone laugh even more. Mei Hui's mother spoke up, criticizing that Wu Ming was lying without even using his brain, because Sheng Chun was 60 years old and he dared to call himself his master. The young guy also chimed in sarcastically, saying he was imagining himself as a born prodigy. The tension continued to build when Boss Jean, the head of the Jean Tong Corporation, whose status was no less than Chang He's, appeared and warned, "Anyone who dares to make a ruckus at Baotang, I will break his legs for Sheng Chun." Seeing this, the young guy immediately wanted to take the opportunity to get acquainted, but was coldly rebuffed. Boss Jean pretended not to know him, saying he had never heard of anyone like that in the Yang family. Wu Ming, at this time, inadvertently realized that a girl had a demonic mole on her face that wasn't congenital, causing her to panic, not understanding why he knew that. At the same time, Mei Hui's grandfather suddenly fell seriously ill again. Mei Hui immediately turned to blame Wu Ming, saying that what he had done rashly just now had made him worse, and she desperately begged him to save her grandfather. Seeing this, Sheng Chun's student hurriedly had people carry him inside for emergency treatment, resolutely not letting Wu Ming follow, even criticizing and stopping him from getting close. Yu Tong, who was watching from outside, finally came forward and took Wu Ming's hand to lead him inside, giving him a chance to save the person. When a student was preparing to insert the needle into a crucial acupoint, Wu Ming immediately spoke up to stop him, warning that inserting it wrong would lead to death. But the family, because they were too worried, recklessly agreed to let him insert it, regardless of the consequences. Mei Hui also personally pushed Wu Ming away, not bothering to listen to his warnings. At the critical moment, Zheng Chun hurriedly ran over, ordering his disciple to quickly insert the needle. He personally took the needle and inserted it into the acupoint, but only a moment later, Mei Hui's grandfather stopped breathing. The mournful wails of Mei Hui's mother rang out, while Mei Hui, because she was too shocked, fainted on the spot. The young guy didn't miss the opportunity, continuing to mock Zheng Chun, saying that he called himself a divine doctor but let people die, affirming that Bao Tang would be finished this time. Zheng Chun, standing under great pressure, fearing that the death would ruin his reputation, decided to take a gamble to save the situation, just as Wu Ming stepped forward and took his hand, causing Zheng Chun to blurt out master in fear. Without hesitation, Wu Ming immediately used the 13 golden divine needles, the first 5 needles sealing the life force, the middle 5 needles opening the heavens and unblocking all the meridians. By the 11th needle, he began to regain consciousness. But when he had inserted halfway, the original energy in his body was severely depleted and his health plummeted, forcing him to stop and hand over the rest to Zheng Chun's disciple. As she was screaming and about to rush up to question him, a thin hand suddenly reached out and grabbed her. Mei Hui's grandfather had woken up. The scene of the dead coming back to life shocked everyone, and they didn't dare to believe their eyes. However, the young guy was still stubborn, denying Wu Ming's contribution, pushing all the glory to Zheng Chun, saying that the first needle had saved the person and Wu Ming only appeared to show off. Mei Hui's mother also thanked Zheng Chun repeatedly. As for Zheng Chun, he didn't stand up to correct them, only silently accepting all the credit, then hurriedly went inside, using the excuse of going into seclusion, ignoring the noisy chaos outside. Meanwhile, Mrs. Shun and Yu Tong both recognized Wu Ming's true abilities and decided to go find him. As for Wu Ming, because his original energy had been severely damaged after performing the divine skill, he had to immediately take a bath to recover. Yu Tong stood outside the door, eavesdropping. She opened the door and stepped inside, but the scene before her couldn't help but startle her. Wu Ming was shirtless. Noticing that he was properly dressed, she dialed her phone and asked him why. When he was clearly a divine doctor, he refused to admit it. But Wu Ming still resolutely refused to admit that he was a divine doctor. After speaking, he immediately laid down to rest. Unexpectedly, Yu Tong boldly climbed straight onto the bed and lay down next to him, causing Wu Ming to be utterly shocked. Yu Tong quickly used actions to explain that she only wanted to sleep with him to beg him to save her grandfather. Wu Ming angrily scolded her for her recklessness, and at the same time emphasized that he already had a wife. In her fluster, Yu Tong accidentally slipped and fell into Wu Ming's arms, their lips touching in an extremely suggestive position. Just then, her bodyguards unexpectedly pushed the door open and caught the embarrassing scene. They hurriedly closed the door again so as not to disturb Wu Ming. He wearily explained, in vain, that Yu Tong wanted to get into bed with him, and he had no such intention at all. He even demanded that Yu Tong go out and explain clearly to everyone. But she was silent, pointing to her throat to indicate she couldn't speak. Outside, Zheng Chun's disciples had a great time gossiping, delighted that their grandmaster seemed to be having a close relationship with the Yang family's young lady, even gleefully calling her grandmaster's wife. Yu Tong hurriedly gestured to explain that things weren't as they thought, but the more she explained, the more they misunderstood. At the same time, the Yang family's young master was secretly colluding with Long Gang, plotting to eliminate Wu Ming and planning to send Yang Ling's grandfather to the grave early in order to monopolize all the assets. In another development, after fainting, Mei Hui had woken up and immediately asked her mother about her grandfather's condition. Her mother quickly recounted the story, saying that it was all thanks to Zheng Chun's saving treatment, and that Wu Ming only knew how to steal the credit. She also didn't understand why Mei Hui's grandfather had arranged such a marriage with someone like Wu Ming in the past. In parallel, after a few hours of rest, Wu Ming had recovered somewhat and immediately went to find Mei Hui. But as soon as they met, her mother immediately shouted and demanded that he leave. Wu Ming calmly explained that 3 years ago, due to some reasons, her condition hadn't been completely cured and was now about to flare up, so if she didn't get treatment in time, it would be very dangerous. However, today his original energy had been depleted too much to be treated immediately. He offered a pill, asking her to take it first to stabilize it and wait for him to fully recover. Then he would treat her completely. Even so, Mei Hui and her mother not only didn't believe him, but also vehemently scolded him and chased him out of the house. Driven to the end, Wu Ming coldly used acupressure on her mother, causing her face to distort, and then continued to use acupressure to control Mei Hui, preventing her from moving. Finally, he forced Mei Hui to take the pill. Outside, Boss Jean, on the orders of Mrs. Shun, had been waiting for Wu Ming for several hours. Seeing him come out, before he could open his mouth, Wu Ming slipped past him and ran away, not bothering to explain why. Immediately afterwards, he dragged Liu to the ATM to check the amount of money in the card his wife had given him. The result was as expected. The card had exactly 10 million yuan on it. He then decided to go meet his friend Liu to ask his opinion on what kind of gift he should buy for Yongling. However, Liu was also a loss, because Yongling was rich and didn't lack anything in the world, so it was difficult to choose a suitable gift. Meanwhile, Mrs. Shun took the initiative to meet with Yongling to discuss important matters. She said that a large international investment fund called SDG was secretly watching, wanting to take advantage of the internal struggle between Yongling and Yongjin to fish in troubled waters and swallow the entire Yang Corporation. Mrs. Shun reassured her that she wouldn't stand idly by and let Yongling be harmed. This time, in addition to warning her, she also made a suggestion, wanting Yongling to agree to marry into her family by marrying Gu Hao, her son. If it was successful, the threat to the Yang Corporation would be resolved. However, Yongling only politely refused this offer with a smile. She apologized to Mrs. Shun, saying that her marriage must be based on love and could not be taken for any other reason. Mrs. Shun didn't force her, only gently instructing her not to answer immediately, but to think carefully and make the right choice. Mei Hui's mother worriedly asked the traditional Chinese medicine doctor about her daughter's examination results. After careful examination, the doctor found a long needle of about 3 centimeters in Mei Hui's brain, not a common silver needle, but a very strong bone needle, lying deep in the gap of the skull, extremely difficult to detect. She panicked, crying and begging her to convey it to Zheng Chun, asking if there was any way to remove the foreign object. The doctor promised to present it to her master, and if there was a way, she would definitely help. Even so, the mother didn't stop complaining, blaming all the faults on Wu Ming, saying that he had brought bad luck to her daughter. Hearing this, the doctor advised her to maintain a good relationship with her grandmaster, Zheng Chun. When she asked about the identity of her grandmaster, the doctor was about to explain when a phone call suddenly interrupted. Meanwhile, Yongling returned home after a night of passionate lovemaking with Wu Ming, her steps somewhat unsteady. Her younger sister kept asking about it, causing her to avoid the questions, secretly blaming that bastard Long Gang for embarrassing her. Wu Ming also brought gifts to Yongling's mansion, hoping to see her, but was stopped by the bodyguards. Having no other choice, he secretly went another way to get inside. At this time, Yongling was swimming, thinking about reports from her subordinates. All the key projects were being secretly hindered by a mysterious force. The opponent had poured in more than $100 million in capital. Without outside assistance, the projects would be in extremely dangerous situations. Saddened, Yongling wondered if she really had to marry someone she didn't love to save the corporation. Lost in thought, she suddenly noticed someone standing behind her and turned her head to see Wu Ming, startling her, and before they could react, they both fell into the pool. Wu Ming, who was well-versed in medicine, turned out not to know how to swim, forcing Yongling to pull him ashore. Yongling asked him how he had managed to sneak in, and Wu Ming replied that if you want to, you will naturally find a way. He called her honey, startling Yongling, who immediately coldly told him to forget about what happened that night. She suspiciously asked, "Did you come to find me just for money?" But Wu Ming frankly replied, "I'm not here for the money. I'm here for you." With that, he took out a series of gifts he had prepared, including an 800-year-old mountain ginseng, a specially made prenatal medicine for her, newborn clothes for the children, and even formula, all specifically for a baby boy and a baby girl. What he said made Yongling doubt him, thinking he was crazy. In her eyes, he was just a man dreaming of marrying into a wealthy family, having a one-night stand, and then dreaming of the impossible. She coldly retorted that even if you wanted to know if you were pregnant, you would at least have to wait a week for the results, and he was just daydreaming, advising him to get checked out. Annoyed, Yang Ling took out another 10 million yuan, gave it to him, and ordered, "Take the money and disappear from my sight immediately." But Wu Ming didn't accept it. He resolutely said, "Listen carefully. I won't take another penny from you. The previous 10 million is considered a loan, and these things are all that I prepared for you and our children. Although they are not worth much, it is my heart." He emphasized that what he said about her being pregnant was true, telling her not to doubt his medical skills. But Yang Ling said, "I believe there are many strange things in this world, but I don't believe you are one of them." She had decided to marry Gu Hao, one of the heirs to the Shun Corporation, whose family background and power were so strong that Wu Ming couldn't imagine it. As long as she married into that family, all the difficulties of the Yang Corporation would be properly resolved. She coldly asked him, "What do you have to compare with Gu Hao?" Those words were like knives cutting into Wu Ming's heart, causing him to suddenly rush forward and forcibly kiss her. Yang Ling tried to push Wu Ming away, but the image of that passionate night was always haunting her mind, preventing her from fully resisting. For the first time in her life, she wanted to live for herself, doing what she really wanted. In that moment of weakness, the two were again caught up in a passionate love affair. However, in the midst of passion, Yu Tong suddenly appeared, startling Yang Ling and causing her to push Wu Ming away. Her younger sister just smiled and quietly left, letting the two continue. Wu Ming didn't give up, earnestly asking her not to marry Gu Hao and to give him more time. But Yang Ling only told him to take the gifts and leave, saying that although she didn't know how sincere he was, she was still moved by what he said, and then left to find her sister. Wu Ming secretly resolved not to let anyone bully her. Yu Tong wondered about the man her sister had just met, but Yang Ling avoided answering. On the other side, Wu Ming and Lu returned to the old restaurant, where they were warmly welcomed by the owners. They hadn't forgotten the effect of the medicine from last time, showing great respect. Wu Ming only quietly said that there were some medicines that were hard to buy even with money. After that, he instructed Lu to inquire about the whereabouts of Gu Hao, the heir of the Shun family in Jinling, who had reached out to snatch Yang Ling away. Even though he heard that Gu Hao was one of the 4 young masters with considerable power, Wu Ming wasn't afraid at all. Meanwhile, Yang Ling was extremely worried, afraid that what Wu Ming said was true, that she was pregnant. She immediately called someone to bring her emergency contraception. Just then, a disciple of Zheng Chun's came to the restaurant and happened to discover Wu Ming. The girl immediately knelt down and recognized him as her grandmaster. Wu Ming gave her a secret manual recording acupuncture points and methods for treating complex diseases. Before he could settle down, people from the Shun family, led by Boss Jean, came and demanded that Wu Ming go with them, also not forgetting to make derogatory remarks about him eating at roadside stalls, saying that he wasn't worthy of talking to them. Wu Ming didn't bother to react, but when they were about to use force, Yu Tong suddenly appeared with her bodyguards, standing in front of him. As she got closer, she inadvertently recognized that the perfume on Wu Ming's body was the same kind that her sister usually used. Yu Tong was shocked to realize that the man who had been embracing her sister was none other than Wu Ming. At the same time that Yu Tong appeared, Wu Ming heard the bodyguard introduce her as the second young lady of the Yang Corporation, and he immediately realized that she was his sister-in-law. The bodyguard then spoke up to remind Boss Jean not to make things difficult for Wu Ming, because he was a distinguished guest of the Yang family, and at the same time asked for permission to postpone Boss Jin's business, because the corporation had urgent matters and needed to find him. However, Boss Jean didn't show any respect, arrogantly declaring that the person who specifically wanted to meet Wu Ming was a big shot in the Shun family in Jinling, and today he had to take him away. Hearing this, Wu Ming immediately guessed that the person behind it was Gu Hao, so he agreed to go with them. Before leaving, he even turned to tell Yu Tong that he would cure her throat after he returned. Yu Tong also didn't ignore him, and immediately ordered bodyguard number 5 to prepare for support, instructing her not to allow any mistakes to occur. In another development, Boss Long, someone with connections to the underworld, didn't believe that Wu Ming could cure Chong He's leg in just one day. He showed disdain, thinking that it was just temporary luck and advising Chong He not to trust him. Then, he offered a price of 50 million yuan to hire Chong He to kill Wu Ming. Initially, Chong He refused, knowing that Wu Ming's value was much higher than that. Just selling his information to a tycoon who needed treatment would be worth even more. But when Boss Long raised the price to 100 million yuan in cash, Chang He immediately changed his attitude, agreeing to the deal without hesitation. Wu Ming was taken to the Shun family's house. At the same time, Yang Ling also made an important decision. She called Gu Hao's mother, agreeing to the marriage deal that she would marry Gu Hao. But the wedding could only be held after 1 year. The Shin woman immediately agreed and promised to direct her team to support the Yang family in preventing the takeover from the International Investment Fund. Even though it was only a temporary solution, Yang Ling had to grit her teeth and accept it in order to save the company. After Gu Hao learned about it, he wondered why his mother could make the other side withdraw their investment but didn't use that method right away. She only calmly said that she respected the decision to hold the wedding after a year, but also wanted to use this opportunity to test how capable her future daughter-in-law was. After Gu Hao left, she went to meet Wu Ming and introduced herself as Shunyu. Wu Ming immediately guessed that Gu Hao wasn't her biological son. However, seeing that she didn't intend to answer, he didn't force it, but switched to the main thing, examining her. Wu Ming requested to come closer to observe more carefully, then gently lifted her hair. At the Shun family's house, Wu Ming looked at the birthmark in the shape of a devil's face on Shenyu's body, and then asked if she really trusted him that much. In response, she affirmed that in this world, it was rare to find someone who could perform the first 5 needles of the 13 golden divine needles. Yet Wu Ming was able to perform up to the 11th needle. To outsiders, that was just a demagogic trick, but to someone who truly understood medical skills, Wu Ming's ability had far surpassed the realm of ordinary people, to the point where even gods and demons couldn't predict it. Not only that, the fact that he knew at a glance that the devil-face mole on her body wasn't congenital further convinced her that he was extraordinary. Wu Ming didn't deny it, saying that other than congenital cases, there was only one way to create a devil-face mole, and that was the 8th needle in the 13 golden divine needles, an art that went against reason. And if she'd used that needle, then she probably guessed who harmed her. Shenyu admitted that the Shun family had once intended for her to take over the position of family head. But because of this bizarre mole, she was only allowed to manage a portion of the family's property. Beside the current family head was an extremely strange person, and it was that person who used a trick to put her in this situation. She had tried countless ways to remove the birthmark, but every time she removed it, after a period of time, it grew back, ruining both her body and mind. Hearing this, Wu Ming only said that the 13 golden divine needles didn't have a fixed system. The combination of the first 8 needles depended on the user, and he himself couldn't guess exactly which technique had been used on her. But Shenyu was convinced that he was the only one who could cure her, and also set a condition that if he succeeded, the reputation of Bao Tang would skyrocket, becoming the pinnacle of the medical profession. But if he failed, it would disappear completely. Wu Ming didn't refuse, but he didn't do it for free either. He bluntly stated a condition, that he would only take action if Yang Ling agreed. However, Shenyu immediately retorted that the Yang Corporation had a direct impact on the commercial planning of the Shun family. So the two sides marrying was mandatory, and a woman wasn't worth anything in the balance between money and benefits. Wu Ming smiled faintly and asked back how she wanted to compensate him. Was she planning to replace Yang Ling as his woman? Shenyu didn't shy away from it, but replied that any woman admired a strong person. But if he wanted to be her man, he first had to prove his ability. In response, Wu Ming made it clear that he didn't mess around. The person he chose was only one and would never change. He was willing to heal her, but currently he was only 70% sure. And to be absolutely successful, he needed to wait for the right time. Even so, the condition didn't change. Yang Ling couldn't be touched. Hearing this, Shenyu questioned on what basis he expected her to believe him without any proof. And on what basis did he expect the Shun family to give way? Wu Ming only looked her straight in the eyes and then lowered his gaze to her feet, asking her to take off her socks. Wu Ming began to treat Shenyu by inserting a needle into the acupoint in the middle of the sole of her foot, and then continued to insert a second needle into the devil-face mole on her face. After only a short time, a black stream of dark energy was sucked out from the mole along the needle, dissolving into the air. When she looked in the mirror, Shenyu realized that the mole had faded significantly, and her expression was extremely surprised. Even so, she still insisted on not canceling the marriage between Gu Hao and Yang Ling. However, She agreed to stand up and help Yang Ling reduce the pressure from outside the corporation, and at the same time announced that she would let the two men compete fairly, and whoever won Yang Ling's heart would be the winner. Wu Ming didn't hide his sarcasm when he mentioned Gu Hao competing for his woman, and was immediately deliberately seduced by Shen Yu to test him. He quickly brushed her hand away, promising to think carefully, and then left. As soon as he stepped out, he ran into Yu Tong, who immediately led him to meet Yang Ling. At the same time, Gu Hao was happily celebrating the fact that he was about to marry Yang Ling. However, the joy didn't last long before his mother called, informing him that the marriage arrangement would change, the family wouldn't intervene anymore, and he had to win Yang Ling's heart himself in the shortest amount of time. Worried, Gu Hao immediately asked his assistant, Kim, how to win Yang Ling's affection. Kim suggested that she cared a lot about her grandfather's health, so if he cured her grandfather, it would be easier to win her heart. Meanwhile, Wu Ming and Yu Tong were in the car returning to the Yang family's mansion when they suddenly received news that Long Gang had offered a bounty of 100 million yuan for his life. Not long after, a truck crashed straight into their car, causing a serious accident. Yu Tong fell into a coma, while Wu Ming was lucky enough to escape injury. Wu Ming determined that the accident was aimed at him, and the person behind it was Long Gang. When Yang Ling found out, she blamed him for not leaving Long Cheng, now causing her younger sister to be implicated. But Wu Ming insisted that whether he left or stayed, they wouldn't let the Yang family off, and only he could cure her grandfather and Yu Tong. Yang Ling didn't believe in Wu Ming's ability. She said that her younger sister had lost her voice for over 15 years, and they had taken her everywhere for treatment, inviting the best doctors in the world, but to no avail. Putting hope in him was impossible. Wu Ming was still confident that besides him, almost no one could cure this disease. At that moment, Zhang Chun's disciple and the bodyguard came forward to confirm that they had witnessed Wu Ming's ability to bring the dead back to life with their own eyes. Hearing his promise that he would withdraw on his own if he couldn't cure her, Yang Ling finally agreed to let him try once. Wu Ming began to use acupressure on 5 important locations on Yu Tong's body, then picked her up and prepared to take the next step, taking off her clothes to clear all the meridians. Yang Ling misunderstood, stopping him because she thought he had bad intentions towards her younger sister. Wu Ming calmly explained that activating the neck muscles and restoring the nerves required clearing the entire body, and it couldn't be done any other way. Even so, Yang Ling was still suspicious and spoke reproachfully. While being misunderstood, he brought up the old story that she was the one who took the initiative. She shyly covered his mouth and was suddenly kissed by him. She resisted, stomping on his foot, and was about to fight back when he spoke sincerely. With a firm gaze, he expressed that Yang Ling was the first and only woman in his life. He didn't care if she admitted it or not, but what had happened was destiny, an inevitable karma, and no matter what, he wouldn't let her leave him. Before those heartfelt words, Yang Ling softened, finally agreeing to let him continue the treatment. She personally helped her younger sister take off her clothes, preparing to enter the important acupuncture process. Wu Ming began to perform acupuncture by inserting needles into important acupoints, stimulating blood circulation, and regulating the meridians for Yu Tong. After completing the acupuncture on the back of her body, he wanted to continue on the front to complete the treatment. However, Yang Ling resolutely disagreed, because if he continued, he would see her younger sister's entire body. Before her persistence, Wu Ming still maintained his position that the life of the person was important, and it would be very dangerous if he closed his eyes and pricked the wrong spot. With no other choice, Yang Ling had to grit her teeth and agree. As he moved to the front to continue, Yu Tong's naked body made him so embarrassed that his nose bled. Being discovered, he quickly blamed it on consuming too much internal energy when performing acupuncture, asking Yang Ling to help him wipe his nose. Continuing the work, he stuck another needle into the acupoint in front of Yu Tong's chest. After that last needle, she suddenly woke up. Waking up in a revealing state, Yu Tong blushed with embarrassment and shouted loudly, causing Xiao Yun and the bodyguards to rush in. Yang Ling was extremely emotional when she heard her sister shout. It didn't matter if she could speak well or not at this time. Just the fact that the sound came out was a miracle. However, Yu Tong felt extremely embarrassed, and the gaze of Wu Ming staring at her made her not know where to hide. With her sister here, she didn't dare to speak. Xiao Yun, seeing this, immediately guessed that the second young lady was definitely embarrassed. After all, Wu Ming was a man. Why not let Xiao Yun perform the acupuncture? and he could just stand by and give instructions? Wu Ming replied that Xiao Yun's skill was not enough, and if a needle was pricked wrong by even a millimeter, all the effort would be wasted. Being questioned why his speed was as fast as lightning when treating Old Man Wang, Wu Ming could only remain silent. The continuous questions made Yang Ling's eyes look at him like they wanted to set him on fire. Finally, she turned to ask Xiao Yun if Yang Yu's meridians were difficult to find, but Xiao Yun calmly replied that they weren't at all, because although Yang Yu had a petite but full figure, her meridians were very straight, and you could find them right away. At this time, Wu Ming blushed, not knowing how to explain, being stared at by the Yang sisters like a criminal, and he flusteredly ran outside, running and thinking, I'm a doctor with a clear conscience. I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I be afraid? But Yang Ling's murderous gaze from just now made him feel uneasy. As for Yang Ling, while hugging her younger sister, in her heart, she only had one sentence, you bastard, I will definitely not let you go. In another development, Long Gang was anxiously asking Chang whether the person he introduced was really trustworthy. However, Chang he only coldly replied that he only introduced a friend, and how they cooperated was not related to him, and he didn't want to get involved. That explanation made Long Gang even more angry, and he roared that the friend was just a truck driver. Yet Chang he easily earned 100 million yuan. Before that anger, Chang he laughed loudly, emphasizing that the reason Long Gang came to him was because he had many connections. Wasn't that why they were friends? Although he didn't want to confront him directly, Chang he still advised Long Gang that if the plan worked, then that's fine, but if it failed, then he should find another way. But Long Gang didn't listen. Having been embarrassed by Wu Ming too many times, he harbored a deep-seated hatred and was determined to kill him at all costs. Concerned that the situation was getting out of control, Chang he immediately called Wu Ming, reminding him to be careful. Hearing the news, Wu Ming thanked him repeatedly, saying that if it wasn't for his reminder, he wouldn't have expected that the truck from earlier was an assassination attempt aimed at him. Before hanging up, Chang he warned him, saying that Long Gang hated him to the bone and he could absolutely not be negligent. Meanwhile, at the Yang family's mansion, Yang Ling advised her younger sister to try to make a sound. But no matter how hard Yang Yu tried, she couldn't speak, and suspicious glances began to rise in everyone's heart. Whether Wu Ming had really cured her as he had claimed, or if it was all just a scam. Yang Yu burst into tears, feeling wronged. Seeing her younger sister collapse, Yang Ling gently comforted her and said that she had agreed with the Shun family, because the Shin family definitely knew many hidden experts who might have a way to cure her. Hearing this, Yang Yu was shocked and immediately asked back, you agreed? She begged her sister not to sacrifice herself for her sake. Even if the family declined and lived a normal life, it would be enough as long as they were happy. Outside, the bodyguard who led Wu Ming here angrily questioned him. Wasn't it he who had vowed that only he could cure Yang Yu? After Yang Ling's criticism, Wu Ming immediately approached Yang Yu to take her pulse and then examined her throat carefully. After a moment of observation, he sighed, determining that the situation was worse than he had predicted, even admitting that he had misdiagnosed. Those words were like a bolt from the blue for Yang Ling, and she angrily ordered him to leave this place immediately. Seeing her sister saddened, Yang Yu comforted her, saying that perhaps this was her fate. But unexpectedly, Wu Ming turned around and apologized, then suddenly put his hands on Yang Yu's chest. The overly abrupt action made her scream, and Yang Ling became so angry that she rushed to punch and kick him nonstop. In the midst of the chaos, a weak voice rang out, the voice of Yang Yu calling her sister, causing the whole room to fall silent. Yang Ling was stunned and then burst out in joy, immediately embracing her younger sister. Xiao Yun, at this time, also realized that the reason for her muteness wasn't due to her physical condition, but because of psychological suppression over a long period of time. Now, the shock from Wu Ming's actions became the catalyst that caused her to speak. Hearing this, Yang Ling gradually understood everything and apologized to Wu Ming with embarrassment. But he seized the opportunity to demand that she compensate for the hurt in his heart. He justified his actions as being solely for medical ethics, treating the disease with the fastest and most effective method. Indeed, the result was that Yang Yu had spoken again. Yang Yu came forward and sincerely thanked Wu Ming for curing her disease, but he jokingly teased her, saying that if she wanted to thank him, she should call him brother-in-law. Yang Ling then said that if he could cure her grandfather, she would accept that condition, and she wouldn't need to marry into the Shun family, because the difficulties of the Yang Corporation could be resolved. Wu Ming agreed without hesitation. However, just then, Yang Ling's uncle unexpectedly came to the house to ask about Yang Yu's condition. She replied that thanks to her uncle's blessings, her younger sister hadn't woken up yet and was still in critical condition, but she couldn't reveal the hospital she was being treated at. The veiled words made the uncle suspicious, thinking that she was implying that he was the one behind the accident. However, the uncle hurriedly denied it, saying that he wasn't heartless enough to attack his niece, and then switched to delivering the bad news that Yang Ling's grandfather had officially been in a vegetative state, according to Professor Han's conclusion. This news shocked her. She couldn't believe it, because only a few days ago he was still healthy. So how could he suddenly become like this? The uncle calmly said that life was unpredictable, and illness was something that couldn't be predicted. With her grandfather falling into a vegetative state, the entire responsibility of the family would be placed on his shoulders. But to reassure her, he also promised to take good care of the two sisters. However, Yang Ling suspected that the uncle was the one who had attacked her grandfather, so she declared that she wouldn't let him achieve his schemes. The uncle arrogantly left, saying that the board of directors would meet tomorrow to elect a new chairman, and the largest shareholder, which was him, would take the highest position in the Yang Corporation. Everyone in the family was very worried about the current situation of the company. At this time, Yang Ling's only hope was Wu Ming. Wu Ming quickly went to the hospital to take her grandfather's pulse. The situation was really bad. All bodily functions depended on machines. He had completely lost consciousness, and the chance of waking up was extremely slim. Yang Ling's heart was in a turmoil, and she looked at Wu Ming, begging him for a definite answer, whether her grandfather still had hope of living or not. According to traditional medicine, a person in a vegetative state was called a corpse decision, a phenomenon where evil energy occupied the position of divine energy, causing brain damage, mental confusion, and loss of awareness. To save someone with a corpse decision, you had to use the 12th needle in the 13 golden divine needles to awaken the source of divine energy. However, the success rate was less than 10%. Despite the danger, Yang Ling still agreed to gamble on all the risks, deciding to let her grandfather receive acupuncture, even if there was only a 1% chance of hope. Meanwhile, Mei Hui and her mother sought out Professor Song, begging him to remove the needle from her daughter's brain, but the result they received was a death sentence. The needle had been in the brain for more than 3 years and was surrounded by nerves, almost becoming one with the brain. If they operated to remove it, the mortality rate would be as high as 99%. Not only that, Mei Hui's recent fainting may be due to nerve compression, signaling that a coma would appear more and more often, and even her life would be threatened. The professor advised her to complete what she hadn't done sooner, because time was running out. Hearing the phrase more than 3 years, Mei Hui and her mother immediately understood that the person who had stuck the needle into the girl's brain was Wu Ming. Upset and pain surged. Mei Hui only wanted to find Wu Ming to vent her anger. At the same time at the Yang Corporation, a shareholder meeting took place with a result that changed the situation. Thanks to holding the majority of the shares, Yang Jin officially became the interim chairman and also dismissed Yang Ling from her position as general manager. Long Gang was appointed to the new position, immediately showing arrogance and provocation. However, even though she lost her position, Yang Ling was still a major shareholder of the corporation and didn't flinch before his attitude. At the victory celebration, Yang Jin, along with Long Gang and Gu Hao, raised their glasses, congratulating Gu Hao for openly revealing his true purpose. The Yang Corporation was just a stepping stone to get close to Yang Ling, and as for Wu Ming, a little brat, he had 100,000 ways to deal with him. In another development, Wu Ming was faking his injuries and being hospitalized under the guise of patient. He deliberately used this identity to manipulate others into taking action for him, both avoiding danger and surveying the situation. Some people hated him and saw him as a thorn that needed to be removed, but others saw him as a rare treasure. Xiaoyan took this opportunity to approach and pretend to care for him, but in reality, she intended to seduce and force herself on him. Faced with a dangerous situation, Wu Ming was unexpectedly forced to repeatedly call the doctor to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. The news of Wu Ming's car accident was immediately spread by Long Gang to all those who were waiting for him to fall from grace. They couldn't hide their schadenfreude, rejoicing in his misfortune. However, Gu Hao showed that he didn't want to let him die too soon. He wanted Wu Ming to witness Yang Ling being tormented so that she would realize that the man she loved was ultimately just a useless person, helpless in the hands of others. Not missing the opportunity, they quickly dragged people over to seize Yang Ling's apartment, forcing her to move out. In the meantime, they didn't stop making mocking provocations, and a scene of violent chaos almost broke out when Gu Hao unexpectedly appeared, his eyes looking at the Yang sisters with undisguised desire. Long Gang immediately grabbed his collar, asking him who he thought he was to interfere here, but was punched hard by Gu Hao. In Long Gang's mind, the thought flashed that he was dissatisfied because according to the plan, it was only supposed to be acting, yet he had acted too realistically. So it turned out that they were staging a scene of a hero saving the beauty to win Yang Ling's heart. Yang Jin also joined the performance with an awkward tone, praising Gu Hao to the sky, and then using the excuse of giving face to his uncle to promise to restore her position as general manager of the Yang Corporation to her. Yang Ling witnessed everything. Her mind was coldly clear. To her, a person without dignity was really no different from a controlled dog. She had thought it through. Glory had its ups and downs, let alone just a small family. She didn't need anyone's help, including Gu Hao's, and she could never marry someone like him. In front of so many witnesses, she resolutely led her sister away, an action that was like a slap straight in Gu Hao's face, causing him to almost lose control with anger. Long Gang immediately suggested to him whether he should consider using more special tactics to punish her. On the other side, Mei Hui and her mother had fallen into the abyss when they learned about Mei Hui's critical condition. Even so, the mother didn't give up hope. If Professor Song couldn't save her daughter, then she would find other professors. Even if she died, she didn't want to lose her daughter. Mei Hui was moved by her mother's determination and tried to comfort her, saying that she would live well and believe in miracles, and that she would be by her mother's side again. But no matter how hard they tried to be strong, both of them still couldn't stop the tears from constantly falling in despair. In the hospital, Wu Ming lay on the bed, sighing thoughtfully, worried about the diamond qi, the mysterious energy of his lineage. As the only legitimate heir of the 13 golden divine needles, he knew the value of each treasure, especially the 12th needle, the life-snatching technique. 3 years ago, when Mei Hui contracted a myotrophic lateral sclerosis, a disease that modern medicine almost couldn't save, her physical condition almost completely collapsed. At that time, only the 12th needle could save her life, but Wu Ming's skill at that time was not enough, so he didn't dare to use it, so he had to insert a demon needle in her body to maintain the activity of her meridians. But keeping her alive was easy. Really saving her life was another matter. Now he understood why his grandfather had forced him to marry Mei Hui, because only on their wedding night, when yin and yang harmonized, could he borrow the qi to completely cure her disease. Xiao Yun, after hearing this, couldn't help but be angry. She didn't accept that. In her heart, Wu Ming was her grandmaster, the only one who belonged to her, and he couldn't possibly become Wang Mei Hui's husband. Just as the tension hadn't subsided, Gu Hao unexpectedly came to visit, using the excuse of caring, but in reality wanting to probe the situation. Seeing Wu Ming, he immediately mentioned Yang Ling and the relationship between her and him. Wu Ming didn't let him be complacent, and affirmed that Yang Ling was his wife and she was pregnant with his child, words that made Gu Hao choke with anger. He then threw out a pack of emergency contraception pills that he had picked up in Yang Ling's room, as if wanting to deny everything. Wu Ming immediately became angry, threatening to make him call him father if he dared to talk nonsense again. The two almost came to a conflict when Shun Yu, Gu Hao's mother, arrived in time and pulled her son outside. Then, she turned back to apologize to Wu Ming on behalf of her son, admitting that she had raised an arrogant child who looked down on others. Even so, she had to be patient because at this time she needed his cooperation. Responding to Shun Yu, Wu Ming replied with a calm attitude, saying that he couldn't be killed, and his acupuncture arm was still intact, but if there was a next time, he might not achieve his goal, but the danger was real. Hearing this, Shun Yu then affirmed that Wu Ming's enemies were also the Shun family's enemies, and they wouldn't have a good ending. When Wu Ming questioned her, asking what if that person was her son, she immediately called Gu Hao to clarify the matter. Being questioned about Wu Ming's accident, Gu Hao flatly denied it, affirming that if he had taken action, Wu Ming wouldn't be lying here anymore. He sarcastically said that he didn't understand why his mother liked a cripple like him. Those offensive words made Wu Ming uncomfortable, requesting a minimum of respect. Then, he teased her back, saying that he couldn't walk easily, his legs were numb, and suggesting that Shunyu massage his legs. Although bitter, Gu Hao could only stand by and watch as his mother personally massaged Wu Ming's feet. Shunyu didn't feel ashamed, affirming that this was her friend and reminding Gu Hao that status might be divided into high and low, but character wasn't. If he said anything rude again, she would take back his power and kick him out of the house. She admitted that he was her adopted son, and that his current bad habits were all due to her spoiling him. She only hoped that Wu Ming would keep this a secret, and at the same time promised that she wouldn't spare anyone who dared to touch him. Just as the conversation had calmed down, Mei Hui's mother unexpectedly passed by and saw Wu Ming. Immediately, she couldn't hold back her emotions, rushing in and trying to attack him, crying and hitting him repeatedly, demanding that he pay for her daughter's life. Wu Ming didn't dodge, only reaching out to grab her arm, causing Shunyu, who was standing beside him, to be stunned when she saw him take action as strongly as if he had never been injured. She asked him insistently, and he only quietly lied, saying that a strange energy had suddenly entered his body, clearing his limbs and meridians, causing the wound to heal on its own. Hearing this, Shunyu smiled, saying that he had indeed played a high-level game. Meanwhile, Mei Hui's mother was still cursing nonstop, calling him a bastard, forcing him to let go and admit that he had harmed her daughter. Wu Ming calmly replied that he had given Mei Hui medicine to stabilize her condition, so there shouldn't have been anything wrong recently. But when she questioned him about the needle in her daughter's head, he didn't deny that he had inserted it because he wanted to save her, and that it was the only method that could alleviate her condition. But instead of thanking him, she was making a scene, denying everything, and continuing to blame him. Shunyu couldn't stand it anymore, and ordered the bodyguards to pull her outside. Then, she turned around and directly asked him if he had deliberately let her come forward, using the status of the Shun family to confront his enemies. Wu Ming didn't deny it. He clearly said that the person behind the plot to harm him was Long Gang of the Long Corporation, hoping that she would come forward and bring him to justice. Shunyu agreed to help, but reminded him not to forget the agreement between them, a secret bond that was waiting for him to fulfill. At this time, Xiao Yun walked in, and he immediately asked her to contact Yang Ling, telling her to quickly leave and find a place to hide, because things couldn't be prolonged any further with Mei Hui's side. When Wu Ming's eyes stopped on the pack of birth control pills that Gu Hao had thrown out, uneasy suspicion arose in his heart. He called Yang Ling's assistant to confirm, and the assistant honestly said that she was the one who had gone to buy the pills and had personally seen Yang Ling take them. Before leaving, she left a sincere sentence, saying that no man had ever truly entered Yang Ling's heart. Meanwhile, Wu Peng, the guy who was still harboring thoughts of winning Mei Hui, hadn't given up yet. He took her and her mother to meet someone called Master Wang, who was touted as a master who could cure all intractable diseases. But as soon as they met, the old man refused to let Mei Hui's mother come in with her daughter, using the excuse that there was an evil aura behind her, the image of a man with a disfigured face, broken hands and feet. She immediately remembered her late husband in fear, her whole body cold. But she didn't know that it was all a play staged by Wu Peng, whose goal was to isolate Mei Hui so that Master Wang could easily manipulate her, preparing for a more profound plot that was gradually revealed. Inside the Taoist temple, that Master Wang didn't bother to hide his contempt, blaming Wu Peng for bringing him a big nuisance. He declared that Mei Hui had actually been dead for several years, and now she was just a walking corpse. Mei Hui didn't believe it, stating that 3 years ago she had contracted a disease, but had soon recovered. But Master Wang affirmed that it was all thanks to evil magic that had stolen the mandate of heaven, forcing her to prolong her life. And now the way of heaven didn't allow that forced request to exist any longer, and the righteous energy in his Taoist gown would suppress all the evil forces in her body. Immediately afterwards, he began to exorcise demons by spraying wine on a whip, chanting spells, and whipping Mei Hui directly. And finally, he sprinkled wine from bamboo leaves on her body, causing her to pass out instantly. When he was done, he turned to Wu Peng, demanding more money, and he unhesitatingly handed over the card with 50,000 yuan on it, and then calmly walked into the room behind to enjoy the facilities that he had prepared. At the same time, Yang Ling's people who had been secretly investigating came back and reported to Wu Ming that Mei Hui had been discharged from the hospital, but her condition was serious and could be life-threatening at any time. Hearing the news, Wu Ming immediately called Mei Hui's mother to warn her, but all he got in return were crazy curses. He earnestly said that he had a way to save her, but she still didn't believe it, even proudly boasting that she had met Master Wang and had absolute faith in him. Wu Ming could only helplessly swear an oath, affirming that if he lied at all, he would be struck by lightning, but Mei Hui's mother still didn't care, loudly threatening that if anything happened to her daughter, she wouldn't let him off. Sensing that something was wrong, Wu Ming immediately called Chang He to inquire about the reputation of Master Wang, but the other party had never heard of that name. He immediately realized that this was a scam and asked Chang He to investigate the true location of the old man. Meanwhile, in the room behind, Wu Peng had revealed his true colors as a pervert. He forced Mei Hui to wear a school uniform, imprisoning her in a confined space, preparing to commit depraved acts. Mei Hui suddenly woke up, feeling extremely panicked when she saw that she was in a bizarre place. Wu Peng no longer pretended and despicably admitted that he liked to see her weak and pitiful, begging in despair. But Mei Hui didn't succumb. She laughed scornfully, telling him to his face that he was trash and could never compare to Wu Ming. Her anger caused him to lose control, slapping her mercilessly, but Mei Hui still didn't stop laughing. As if the more she was beaten, the more she stirred up the shame in his heart, saying that behind that distorted face was a dirty soul, so self-conscious that it was pathetic. He frantically choked her and then took out his phone to record a video, preparing to post the clip online to smear her. He lunged at her like a wild beast, intent on raping her, but Mei Hui desperately resisted, tearing his ear, causing blood to flow profusely. Just then, Wu Ming burst through the door, barging in. Without saying a word, he rushed to beat Wu Peng half to death, and then quickly untied and shielded Mei Hui. Yang Ling's people also arrived just in time, capturing both Wu Peng and that Master Wang, handing them over to the police. Mei Hui's mother, after witnessing everything, completely collapsed. She hugged her daughter, constantly crying and apologizing, regretting too late that she had trusted the wrong person, bringing a wolf into the house and almost killing her daughter with her own blind faith. Although Wu Ming had saved her daughter, this mother still didn't believe in his abilities, thinking that he was just a rogue and only believing in what she saw and heard. Xiao Yun had to use skillful words to make the mother understand that Wu Ming wasn't an ordinary person, but a divine doctor with the ability to heal. The mother had gradually realized it, and even though she still had doubts in her heart, she decided to temporarily trust Wu Ming, hoping that this would be the last ray of light to save her daughter. After that, the mother completely changed her attitude, kneeling down to beg Wu Ming for forgiveness for her past actions, including beating and insulting him. She explained that it was all just a misunderstanding and begged Wu Ming to save Mei Hui. Wu Ming showed that he didn't care about the past, saying that everything was over, and now they just needed to focus on saving Mei Hui. However, he also warned that removing the demon needle would cause Mei Hui's condition to flare up violently, if not handled carefully. Xiao Yin continued to repeat the words of her grandmaster, Wu Ming, saying that he had previously intended to combine yin and yang to save her, but because of the broken engagement, everything couldn't go as planned. Mei Hui's mother, who no longer had a choice, suddenly said that she would marry Wu Ming to her daughter immediately, so they could consummate the marriage. But Xiao Yin quickly rejected that, affirming that Wu Ming already had a lover. The story continued to be tense when Mei Hui's mother asked Wu Ming to be her son-in-law, thinking that if he agreed, everything would be resolved. Wu Ming refused and only agreed to check Mei Hui's condition before deciding, leaving the mother with nothing to do but tearfully think that she could only trust Wu Ming so that her daughter would have a chance to survive in her last days. Yang Ling was standing outside her grandfather's hospital room and felt unwell. Yang Yu quickly came to ask, suspecting that her sister was pregnant. Yang Ling immediately denied it, but unexpectedly received a call and listened silently. Yang Yu asked about Wu Ming and whether she liked him. Yang Ling disagreed, thinking that Wu Ming wasn't a good person and warning her sister not to like him. However, Yang Yu thought that Wu Ming was very good and affirmed that no matter who Wu Ming chose, the fact that her sister liked him wouldn't change. In another development, Gu Hao was confused because Long Gang's family went bankrupt and he intended to kill Wu Ming, but couldn't take action because he had to face his mother. Yang Jin, whom Gu Hao had helped, was unable to seize the Yang Corporation, making him worried. Besides that, Yang Ling tested a pregnancy test and discovered that she was pregnant, which made her even more angry with Wu Ming, because she didn't understand why she was pregnant even though she had taken emergency contraception. Mei Hui, lying on the hospital bed, was immersed in her thoughts, wondering if things would have been different if she had believed in Wu Ming from the start. Wu Ming, with his extraordinary medical ability, used his fire energy to penetrate into her blood vessels, determining the location of the acupuncture needle that was causing the obstruction. Meanwhile, a group of doctors was discussing Wu Ming's ability to heal and the great expectations they had for him, especially regarding Shun Yu's devil face mole. Even so, they cautiously advised her not to have too much hope, because according to legend, only the 13 golden divine needles could save the king of hell. Was Wu Ming really a person with such miraculous ability? Only time would tell. But Mei Hui, in pain, said to Wu Ming that she wouldn't bother him anymore, instead wanting to thank him for saving her life. However, deep in her heart, she still yearned for one thing only: whether Wu Ming could give up his love for Yang Ling for her sake. She asked him if he had to choose between life and love, what would he choose? Wu Ming replied that both were important, but he wouldn't give up, and affirmed that there was still another way to save her. In response, Mei Hui asked him to agree to be her boyfriend for one day, just so that she could live her last days to the fullest without any regrets. Wu Ming agreed to Mei Hui's wish. However, at the same time, Sa came to announce that Mei Hui's father's grave had been vandalized. She was angry and immediately set out to investigate, unaware that Sa had been bribed by Gu Hao, who had a plot to get Yang Ling into his hands. Despite the troubles, Mei Hui still only wanted to live one day to the fullest with Wu Ming, enjoying the simple joy that she had never had. Wu Ming, at this moment, decided to try an extremely risky method to save Mei Hui. He led her to find Shen Yu to coordinate the treatment, but before starting, he wanted to go back and pay for the meal, a small action but showing sincerity in every action. Shen Yu, although worried about the plan, finally trusted Wu Ming and agreed to participate. Wu Ming and Shen Yu carried out a dangerous treatment method, including soaking in specially made medicinal water and letting the substances in the medicine permeate through the skin directly into the body. Everything went according to plan, but pain and risk were unavoidable. Mei Hui would have to endure it to see if she could survive and be cured. Meanwhile, Gu Hao took Yang Ling to a desolate place with an evil plot, intending to commit a depraved act. Gu Hao kept lunging at Yang Ling, eager to possess her, but at the same time, Wu Ming's skills were clearly demonstrated. He used an absolute move that even medical masters had to admire. The dark energy from Shun Yu was transferred into Wang Mei Hui, causing the two medical doctors standing outside to be shocked. Wu Ming didn't just stop there, he continued to perform the 13 golden divine needles. A powerful light shone straight into Mei Hui's body. She endured it, and finally, the demon needle came out, but Mei Hui was also exhausted and passed out. Wu Ming didn't stop. He continued to use the 13th demon needle to suck out all the dark energy, removing the devil mole that was holding back her life. In the meantime, Yang Yu was worried, not knowing where her sister was and unable to contact her. The worry increased when Xiao Yun stopped her from disturbing Wu Ming because he was treating Mei Hui. Yang Yu was confused and couldn't sit still, but she could only wait. At the same time, Yang Ling was facing Gu Hao. She tried to resist, knocking him down with a wine bottle, but that only stimulated the bastard even more. Although she threatened to end it all, he only laughed, feeling that victory was within reach. Finally, Wu Ming walked out, and Yang Yu immediately told him that her sister had been kidnapped by Gu Hao. Shen Yu immediately called Gu Hao, demanding that he bring Yang Ling back safely, and that if anything happened, she wouldn't let him off. Gu Hao didn't show any fear, arrogantly replying that his mother didn't treat him as a son, and that she only adopted him to shut up the public. Wu Ming couldn't stand those contemptuous words, and he snatched the phone, angrily saying to Gu Hao, "If you have the ability, then aim at me, you bastard." The other party challenged Wu Ming to come to the suburban power plant in the east, and at the same time, he threatened Yang Ling, saying that today he would show her Wu Ming being trampled by him and show how he conquered her. Wu Ming didn't hesitate, and he immediately rushed straight to the place. He faced the crowd alone, but they were too wrong to underestimate him. With his excellent flying needle skills, he made all of them fall to the ground. Next, Wu Ming went over and smashed a wine bottle over Gu Hao's head, making him cry like a child. He only confessed, "She's in there." Wu Ming finally broke into the place where Gu Hao was holding Yang Ling. That Gu Hao used a knife to threaten Wu Ming, forcing him to kneel down to save Yang Ling. But with his flying needle talent, Wu Ming threw 3 needles, causing him to not only kneel down, but also to be muted. Immediately, Yang Ling, witnessing that scene, felt aggrieved and was about to go and hug Wu Ming, but was stopped by Yang Yu. She asked Yang Ling if she was okay, and at the same time revealed that Yang Jin and Long Gang had been arrested and would face the punishment of the law. Yang Ling felt dizzy after being drugged and wanted Wu Ming to check her, but Yang Yu didn't agree, asking her to support Yang Ling because men and women shouldn't touch each other casually. Yang Ling didn't agree, saying that Wu Ming was her brother-in-law and that there had been more intimate relationships between the two sisters. Yang Yu still stubbornly refused to give in. She thought that she had known Wu Ming first and that both sisters loved him, forcing Wu Ming to choose. Yang Ling even suggested that if Wu Ming confessed his love to her, she would accept his proposal and share all of her assets with him. Yang Yu also didn't want to lose, promising that she would give him all the money she had saved and even accept being his concubine if Wu Ming chose her. Finally, Wu Ming had to face a difficult choice, but just as he was about to react, the unexpected truth happened. It was all just a dream when he dozed off in class, and the teacher was angry because he was lazy and only knew how to daydream. However, with that dream, Wu Ming felt his mission to heal and save people. He was determined to study hard to become a good doctor, and he pledged that he wouldn't let down any life. A girl then came to ask Wu Ming if he could help her study, and Wu Ming was stunned by the girl's beauty and then replied, "Yes." Thank you all for accompanying the channel to the last minutes of the movie. Don't forget to press like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the channel's videos. Thank you all.